A single jet engine can cost more than $10 million, and a wide-body jet needs at least two of them. Yet many airlines don't actually own the engines hanging under their wings. They lease them, sometimes swapping a specific physical engine on and off the same airframe multiple times a year. Airlines typically have to keep $10 to $20 million tied up per spare engine just sitting in inventory, ready in case one gets pulled off a plane for scheduled maintenance or an unexpected repair. Multiply that across a fleet of a few hundred aircraft with multiple engine types, and an airline could easily need a spare parts inventory worth hundreds of millions of dollars just to keep planes flying on schedule. That capital sits idle most of the time, doing nothing but waiting for the rare day it's actually needed, which is exactly the kind of expensive inefficiency that leasing was invented to solve. The modern engine leasing model traces back to an idea from Rolls-Royce in the early 1960s, now widely known as power by the hour. Instead of buying an engine outright and separately budgeting for its maintenance, an airline pays a fixed fee for every hour that engine actually flies. If the engine sits idle, the airline pays nothing for it that day. If it's in the air 10 hours, the airline pays for 10 hours of use. The engine manufacturer or a specialized leasing company owns the physical engine, handles all scheduled maintenance and overhauls, and absorbs the financial risk of unexpected repairs, all baked into that per-hour rate. The real value of this arrangement is predictability. Jet engine overhauls are enormously expensive and famously hard to predict, since the exact timing depends on how the engine has been operated, what conditions it's flown through, and how many cycles of heating and cooling its components have absorbed. Under a traditional ownership model, an airline could budget for a routine engine year, and then get hit with a multi-million-dollar overhaul bill it didn't see coming. Under a power-by-the-hour contract, that risk transfers to the leasing company or manufacturer, who is betting that their maintenance costs across their entire portfolio of leased engines will average out predictably, even if any single engine has a rough year. This is where independent engine lessors come in. Companies like Willis Lease Finance, widely considered the largest independent lessor of commercial jet engines in the world. Rather than every airline maintaining its own dedicated spare engine inventory, lessors maintain large pools of interchangeable engines that get shared across many airline customers. When an airline needs to pull an engine for scheduled maintenance, the lessor sends over a serviceable spare from its pool almost immediately, so the aircraft barely loses any time on the ground. The removed engine goes off to an overhaul shop, gets fully serviced, and eventually rejoins the same shared pool to be leased out to the next customer that needs a temporary swap. This isn't a niche corner of the industry. The global engine leasing market was valued at roughly $11 billion in 2025, and analysts project it will grow toward $18 billion by the early 2030s. Major engine manufacturers like GE Aerospace and CFM International now actively compete on service agreements just as much as they compete on engine performance itself, offering airlines everything from basic parts and labor coverage to full lifetime maintenance plans that bundle the engine's entire operational life into one predictable rate. Some of the largest recent deals run into the hundreds of millions of dollars, covering dozens of engines across an airline's entire fleet under a single long-term agreement. Leasing isn't universal, and plenty of airlines still own engines outright, particularly larger carriers with the balance sheet to absorb maintenance risk themselves and the scale to justify running their own spare parts operation. For these airlines, ownership can work out cheaper over the very long run, since a leasing company's rate necessarily has to include a profit margin on top of the actual maintenance cost. The calculation usually comes down to fleet size, cash flow priorities, and how much financial predictability an airline is willing to pay extra for. A smaller or newer carrier with limited capital almost always leans toward leasing, while a large legacy airline with decades of maintenance data on its own fleet may find ownership genuinely cheaper. Because of this leasing and pooling system, the specific physical engine hanging under an aircraft's wing on any given flight might not be the one it left the factory with, and might not even be the same engine it had last month. Engines get swapped for maintenance, swapped again while the removed one is overhauled, and potentially swapped a third time if that particular airframe needs another engine pulled before the original one returns from the shop. Airlines track every engine's individual flight hours and maintenance history separately from the airframe itself, treating each engine almost like its own independent asset that happens to be temporarily attached to a specific plane. So the next time you look out the window at the engine keeping you in the air, there's a real chance it doesn't belong to the airline you bought your ticket from. It belongs to a leasing company somewhere, quietly renting it out by the hour, engine by engine, across half the airlines in the sky.